Old Bridge President's Council, and I will be the moderator for tonight's event. Just to go over some quick guidelines and ground rules, we ask that all members of our audience and candidates remain masked throughout tonight's proceedings. Our questions were fielded from emails from people within the community, as well as questions from people in the audience tonight. The questions are sorted and screened by volunteers to ensure that a wide variety of questions are asked. And due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer all questions asked or submitted. We will begin with candidates making an opening statement. Opening statements can be up to 2 minutes long. When your time is up, you must immediately conclude your remarks. We need to stick to our time limits to ensure fairness to all candidates. When we get into the question and answer period of tonight's program, candidates will be given 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer each question. Candidates cannot concede their time to other candidates, and candidates cannot address their comments to other candidates. We wish you all good luck, and thank you for coming this evening. Our first opening statement will be from Ms. Lisa Lent.
Good evening, all. My name is Lisa Lent, and I am running for a seat on the Board of Education. If elected, this would be my second term on the board. While on the board, I worked as a team player working with administration, community, and colleagues, and always putting the students' education and safety first. I helped secure necessary education, sports, and arts programs, and helped create safety procedures to protect our students against school shootings and, more recently, COVID. In addition, I was chairwoman of the negotiation committee, contributing to the creation of a fair and equitable contract between the district and the OBEA. I was able to apply my business and accounting background to help navigate the district through tremendous cuts in state aid funding. That was only the beginning. There will be more cuts to our funding, more threats, and more issues that we will need someone with the know-how, the background, and the education to help us not only survive, but succeed. Every candidate up here holds unique and beneficial qualities. You will hear tonight from each of them on how they would have handled the budget cuts and the pandemic issues differently. But I am one of the few candidates up here that is able to create a logical plan and follow through on making it happen, especially with the district requiring a strategic plan for its facilities and operational issues for the short-term future. I truly believe that Old Bridge is very lucky to have 7 dedicated members of its community running for election. But you, the voter, must vote for who you believe would do the best job. We'll listen to your concerns and put your students first. I am a mom, a business owner, a business executive, and a volunteer firefighter, and have a proven, dedicated member of this community. Again, my name is Lisa Lent, and I am listed first on the ballot. I hope you entrust me enough to help me win a seat on the board and to vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lent. Our next candidate is number 2 on the ballot, Mr. Jay Slade. You may begin.
Good evening. My name is Jay Slade. I am living in Old Bridge for the last 17 years, and I am running for the Board of Education with ballot spot number 2. What motivated me to run was basically pure frustration of having all of my thoughts and concerns shut out by the current administration. So from that, I now vow to be a conduit to all the parents and citizens of Old Bridge and have your voices heard. Everyone in this room has an isolated situation that they would like to see addressed, and I feel that the open door policy with the current administration has fallen by the wayside. I have 2 children in the public school system, a 3rd and a 5th grader, and I feel that that will give me an advantage as I have a bird's eye view on what's happening in our elementary schools, which in my opinion were hit the hardest during the pandemic. These kids need structure and a hands-on education. I support in-school learning under a safe environment and a curriculum that's both diversified and effective for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Our next candidate, number 3 on the ballot, Mr. Richard Dunn.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Dunn, and I'm seeking re-election to the Old Bridge Board of Education. Over my 10 years on the board, I've always fought for a fair and equitable education and to enhance the academic enrichment for all students. I insisted and supported for the implementation of a full-day kindergarten program, school counselors in every school, and enhanced RTA programs in the district which have paid dividends based upon the academic excellence that our Old Bridge schools have achieved. With this all said, there is so much more that needs to be done over the next 3 years. With the sequestration of state aid that has caused a $15 million hole in our budget, mandated universal pre-K, the ongoing budget crisis, aging facilities, redistricting possibilities, due to the lack of elementary schools in developing areas of Old Bridge, there will be many controversial and hard decisions to be made where a seasoned and experienced board member is needed. A sensible and proper strategic plan is needed to deal with the future pitfalls. You will hear tonight from a few candidates how the district failed the students and the school community during COVID pandemic with virtual learning and mask mandates, which can be argued. But at this point, it's water under the bridge, and we must focus on the future and moving forward for the betterment of our district and students. I've not only been dedicated to the school community as a board member, but as a firefighter and current chief of the South Old Bridge Fire Department for the last 18 years, volunteerism is important to the fabric of Old Bridge, and the Old Bridge Strong is instilled in my heart. Based upon the aforementioned, I believe that I'm the best suited candidate to continue fighting for our students and community, just as I've done over the last years on the Board of Education. I'm seeking your support for re-election to the Old Bridge Board of Education. Vote number 3, Richard J. Dunn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Number 4 on the ballot, Mr. Sal De Prima.
Good evening. My name is Salvatore De Prima. I am running for re-election to your Board of Education. I am candidate number 4 on the ballot. Why should you vote for me? One word: experience. The bio you picked up will tell you about my school district and community involvement, but I'd like to tell you about my Board of Education involvement. I have been a proud board member for 9 years. I've been through many ups and downs, mostly ups, but we're just getting started. We've got a lot more to do. Our district has and is continuing to improve. What used to be a good district is now a great district. Higher test scores, schools of character, and blue ribbon schools, to name a few. Of course, I can't take all the credit, but I am proud to have been a part of what I call the renaissance of the Old Bridge Township School District. The last few years have been hard, with millions of dollars of state aid lost and a global pandemic that none of us have ever seen before. We've had to figure out ways to keep up the high standards of school we've been accustomed to. It hasn't been easy, and some people were not happy with some decisions. But I can assure you, I can assure you and promise you that every decision or vote made was done with only the best intentions of every student and community member. There were times I wasn't sure which way to vote, but I listened to the community members who spoke up on the issue at hand. You have entrusted me with your most prized asset, your children, and I can assure you I have, and if given the opportunity, will continue to work my hardest to make sure every child has the best education available. I've been hearing that the board should be more transparent, but that confuses me. Everything we say or do as a board is of public record and can be looked up on the district website or YouTube. On a personal level, I have no agenda, personal or political. My children are grown, so I'm not here for them, I'm here for you. And as far as politics, there is no room for politics on a Board of Education. In fact, the people that know me know I am probably the least political person you'll ever meet. In closing, I ask for your support. I love this community and hope to continue serving you. Good luck to my opponents. Please vote candidate number 4, Salvatore De Prima. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Next, we have candidate number 5, Mr. Leonardo Marchetta.
Hi.
That's kind of loud. Hello?
Hello. Test. Yeah. Hello, my name is Leonardo Marchetta. I am an Old Bridge resident for 11 years. I have 3 kids in the school district currently. 2 have IEPs for speech, and my oldest child previously had an IEP and received OT and speech services. Was in an LLD class for kindergarten, and through the tremendous teaching of the faculty in the Grissom School was able to be mainstreamed by 1st grade. I myself was branded learning disabled in grammar school and was left behind in the 4th grade. I received services throughout high school and saw firsthand how little attention the special education students were given in both the parochial and public sectors of education. This past year opened my eyes to how important having a good board is. After all, they make a majority of decisions that affect the children here in this great town. After paying close attention to how they handle things, it became clear that they are a very reactive board. They seem to fail to plan ahead. As a matter of fact, they seem to fail to plan for anything. During the pandemic, students struggled to learn and teachers struggled to teach. I have it actually on good merit that they never even checked in with teachers to see how it was going. I am up here tonight as a parent, physically alone. However, here with me in spirit are the thousands of parents who have felt voiceless these past years, especially this last one. When elected, the voiceless, ignored parents of Old Bridge will be ignored no more. No longer will outcries fall on the deaf ears of the present board and the administration. Instead, they will now come to a new board, and our voices will be heard. Please consider voting for me, number 5 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Number 6 on the ballot, Mr. Darren Asatouli is not with us this evening. However, he did submit a written statement, which I will read. Hi, my name is Darren Asatouli, and I am currently running for the Board of Education for Old Bridge Township. I am married and have 2 children, 11 and 15. They are attending Carl Sandburg Middle School and Old Bridge High School. My wife and I moved to Old Bridge many years ago from Brooklyn because schools were highly rated and worth moving for. What I have witnessed over the last few years has compelled me to run. Our children, the children of Old Bridge in all towns across the country, should always be our main priority. Whether education, physical, or mental health, we should have them in mind first and foremost. My personal feeling about what is currently happening in our children's needs are being put last. Due to the pandemic, the changes which have occurred have surmounted to a huge mental burden on our children, which we will see for years to come. I cannot stand by, watch, and not act. I intend on bringing leadership, truth, and transparency. I will advocate for our children and be the voice that is currently not represented on many board members today. I am 100% committed to restoring Old Bridge schools to the glory they once were. That's from Mr. Darren Asatouli, number 6 on the ballot. Our final candidate of the evening, number 7 on your ballot, Mrs. Kelly Ellis Foster.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I would just like to thank the Old Bridge PTA President's Council and the OBA for sponsoring this event. I am Kelly Ellis Foster. I'm running for the Old Bridge Board of Education because I have seen the significant progress this district has made over the years, and I want to see us continue on that path. As a community, we have gone through some very productive and happy times, but we've also been through some very difficult times. In some cases, tragedy and challenge brought us together. In other times, it divided us. We are successful and make the most progress when we all come together and work on common goals. After the last 18 months, it may be hard to remember some of the great progress we've made. So I'm going to try to just give a few of those in the short time I have to remind people that we have an integrated preschool. We have an RTI program that is a model for the state. We have several nationally recognized PTAs. We have peer programs at the elementary, middle, and the high school. Our staff has been recognized for over 44 promising practices that are shared not only across the district but across the nation. This year we're introducing block scheduling to the middle school and the high school, giving more focused time on math, science, and social studies. The middle school has the Junior Honor Society and Junior Honor Societies for world languages. We have a comprehensive high school with over 180 academic and elective programs, including industrial arts, allowing our children to start a career right out of college. Right out of high school. Next year, students will be in the high school will begin to take classes that will allow them to graduate not only with a high school diploma, but an associate's degree from Middlesex Community College. And finally, we offer comprehensive counseling services at every level to support the emotional and social well-being. Thank you, Mrs. Ellis Foster.
Your time is up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. That was number 7 on your ballot, Ms. Kelly Ellis Foster. All right, candidates, we're going to move into our question and answer session. So the questions that we have, like I said, were fielded from emails that were received earlier in the week, and then some from our audience. in front of you. We're going to be starting in ballot order, and you guys are going to proceed that way. So the first question, Ms. Lent is going to answer first, the second question, Mr. Slade, and so on and so on. Some of the questions will be for individual candidates, some of them will be for all. And I'll let you know before you answer which one it is. Alrighty, so our first question, and Ms. Lent, this is for you to start, but all of you will answer this question. You have 90 seconds to answer. Please give the public an overview of your knowledge of the position you want to be elected for. What do you know about staffing, curriculum, and the inner workings of a school building aside from your own children's experience?
I previously sat on the Board of Education as a member a year ago. I was honored enough to be part of the board for one term, 3 years, in which I feel it wasn't really enough time to acclimate and to really get into the nitty-gritty of things. I did learn a lot during that time period, but I would like, if re-elected, I think I would be a better asset and I would be able to offer more because I have a better understanding of the inner workings of the system. That's my answer.
Thank you very much. Mr. Slade?
Outside of my children's exposure to staffing in school, I don't have any experience with staffing. My position would be on every topic, would be to be a part of any committees that would be made available to educate me and get me up to speed as to what shortfalls there might be in the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Good evening. My knowledge of the Old Bridge Board of Education and inner workings of the school district is vast. Being on the Board of Education for 10 years, it has given me the experience and knowledge to be able to navigate all the pitfalls that we will be experiencing over the years. Being the chairman for 10 years of the Finance, Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee has given me a unique perspective on how the district works and what the issues are financially. I've had that position from day one over my tenure, and I have been given an awesome responsibility to try to work with the administration and also my colleagues on the board to find avenues of cost savings. Obviously, with the $15 million hole that we have due to sequestration, my experience becomes very more valuable. I also sat on the Personnel Committee for many years as well, so that gives me some unique perspective as well regarding staffing concerns that we currently have. As you may know, right now staffing is difficult because there's people who are out on leave, we can't get nurses, there's a lot of positions we can't fill because people do not want to work at this point for various reasons. So you're going to need someone who's objective, someone who can work with the administration, someone who knows what they're doing moving forward because it's going to be more critical moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question,
Surely.
please?
Let me just grab it. Sorry. The question is, please give the public an overview of your knowledge of the position you want to be elected to. What do you know of staffing, curriculum, and the inner workings of the school building aside from your own children's experience?
Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as staffing, as Ms. Lentz said, I was part of negotiations for a few years, and that was one of the hardest committees I was ever on, because you want to do the right thing for the teachers and staff, but you also have to represent the community, and when it comes to people's money, it's hard. As far as the inner workings of the schools, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what the board does, and going through the schools and making sure things are going the way they should is not really part of our responsibility. So my involvement in the physical buildings has been minimal. As far as the experience part, I think I touched on that when I started. I've been here a while, and I've had my hand in probably at least partly everything there is to do as a board member. I've been an officer. As Mr. Dunn said on his committee, I've chaired the same committee for about 9 years now also. Curriculum. Curriculum is, we have a curriculum committee, but it's presented to us as far as what the school wants to do. It's up to the committee to say yay or nay and present it to the remaining board members to see if it's going to be made into a motion. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
As a parent, I don't have any experience with any of that stuff, but teachers are put into buildings to teach. Principals are put into buildings to maintain the composure of the school. But it does not, being that I don't have the experience, doesn't mean that I'm not willing to work to learn about it. I mean, there's a lot of experience here on the board. Everybody on the board basically had 10 plus years of being on here, so they should have that experience. But myself, Mr. Slade at the end over there, we're brand new, and we are willing to put the work in to learn whatever is needed to learn to make Old Bridge the best school district that it can be. We're willing to work with other members of the board, regardless if we agree with them or not. We're willing to work with them. I'm willing to work with any sort of administration that is put in front of me at the time. Long story short, when elected to the board, I will be willing to work tirelessly to make sure that Old Bridge is the best school district it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. And Mrs. Kelly Ellis Foster.
Thank you. My professional background is in the HR field, so I have some basic understanding about staffing and learning. But the one thing I've learned is a public school is nothing like the private sector. So what would apply in a private sector does not necessarily apply in the school system. I have served on the personnel committee, so I have a pretty good, and negotiations, so I have a pretty good understanding of some of the complexities within our school districts. And staffing and curriculum are very closely aligned, trying to meet the unique needs of each student. So it is extremely diverse in what we do and the programs we offer. The one thing I would say, because I believe part of the question is as a board member, what's our role? And one of our key roles is making sure we hire the right personnel who have the in-depth knowledge in doing that. So we have, in our the administration, those people who have the in-depth knowledge of the needs as well as the rules and regulations by the state and the Department of Education of what those positions need and what the curriculum needs to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellis Foster. That is the end of our first question. Our second question is another question for all of our candidates. Mr. Slade, you will answer first. If you were elected, what are the first items on your agenda that you think Old Bridge schools need to address?
If elected, one of the first pieces of agenda, would be to maintain in-school learning. I know there's going to be some obstacles coming forward. We can't predict the outcome of this pandemic, but I'm an adamant person for in-school learning to make sure that the teachers get the support that they need. I would like to see some more paras in the program to help the teachers. I think they had a big boatload last year. They were technicians, they were part of the Geek Squad, they were therapists. So I'd like to see more support for the teachers and to maintain in-school learning.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn.
Yes, thank you. The first and foremost thing we will have to worry about, or I will worry about if reelected, is to make sure that our budget is intact and that we have the monies to operate our wonderful school district. As we know, the state of New Jersey has decided that the sequestration of state aid is a priority for them for certain school districts. And this school district has unnecessarily been forced to do without $15 million plus per year, and that compounds, as we know. So this district has been struggling to make ends meet regarding our educational enrichment of our students. However, I can say unequivocally that this district has done a wonderful job balancing the sequestration and providing the finest services. We will continue doing that, but that is the main issue moving forward. And the first thing I will do as chairman of the Finance Committee and also newly re-elected board member is to make sure that budget is intact so we have the funds and resources to provide the utmost perfect and quality education to all our students in Old Bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima.
I agree with the previous comments. I think the pandemic is number one right now because it's still happening. It's been a rough year and a half for us, for everybody out there, and The current board and administration, we tried our hardest. Like I said in my opening statement, not everybody was happy. Some things we did, we had to do. Some things we were powerless. Even if we said yes and somebody above us decided no, then so be it, it was no. But there's still work to do, obviously. Until everybody could come back to school, to their shopping, to their jobs, the way it was 2 years ago, we're not done until that happens, and we have to find ways to make it happen. As I said, a lot of it is mandated by the state, and it's, again, another misconception. We have no control over those things, no matter what we want to do or say. And as Mr. Dunn said, obviously the budget is a priority because of the loss of so much money. If you have a household budget of X and all of a sudden it changes to Y, but you still want to maintain that X lifestyle, you got to get creative and find ways to make it happen without losing something you're accustomed to. So far, we've been lucky through attrition, and we really haven't lost anything except the first year. The first year was a little bit of a negative, but since then, we're trying to maintain a status quo, and hopefully, if I'm reelected, I will continue to help do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. If you were elected, what would be the first items on your agenda that you think Old Bridge schools need to address?
I would say, being that there is an increase of about in the middle school level of 196%, there's an increase of 196% of students receiving at least one F grade in the school year of 2020 to 2021. I would address the educational need of the students to make sure that we can further develop them into good people and smart people after they graduate from the Old Bridge District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. I think there's three critical issues in front of the district right now, and there are actually plans for them. But the first is to assess the academic and knowledge lost and the gap over the pandemic time period. So to measure that through assessments. The second one then is based on that data, how to do individualized plans to determine how to meet that educational gap and where each child has needs, where we do, and we have investments in people this year to meet some of those needs. With the academic, it's not only the academic, but also assess the emotional and social well-being of our students and provide services that they may need. And then the third one is to create a roadmap with our strategic plan on what to do with our infrastructure. So we do have aging buildings, and create a roadmap and a plan going forward of how are we going to address not only the aging buildings, but the potential increase in population coming into the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent?
I think every candidate up here has the same concerns, the students and the taxpayer. Those would be my two main priorities. Obviously, the students, making sure that they're acclimating back to in-person learning, making sure that we're developing plans and processes in place to keep them in the schools learning, to make sure that there's no additional gaps in their education or, as Ms. Ellis Foster just mentioned, their emotional side. Second would be the budget. We're losing millions each year, and you need a person that can concentrate on the budget, not only knows figures, knows how to read a budget, but has the ability to help create one where it doesn't eliminate necessary programs and limits the educational needs of the students going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Our next question is for all the candidates, beginning with Mr. Dunn. The question reads, what do you feel is the best way to protect all students and staff from COVID-19?
So as we know, the pandemic over the last 2 years have caused inequities in education and has caused a lot of issues within all school districts. And as others have said up here, you know, our hands are tied as a Board of Education because the supreme decision-making was given to the administration, usurping our authority. The best way right now to deal with it is continuing doing what we're doing, but have an onus on the fact that we need to ensure that the educational enrichment is dealt with. Masking does work. We know that. It is something that is universally accepted right now. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreements. I have a different opinion about masking. However, I have a responsibility as a board member to ensure the safety of everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreement on masking. Separation 3 feet is important as well. That's the new CDC mandate within the schools. So what we're doing right now to ensure that our students remain healthy is appropriate. I know that we've done very well right now based upon our COVID numbers and also with our confinement or having people put into quarantine are going down. But this is a challenge that we will have to face going forward for the next few years, as we know.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
Thank you. I have no medical background. I am not sure about my colleagues, but because of that, the only thing we can do to fight the COVID pandemic is to go by what the experts say. Whether I agree with some things or not, again, they're the people that know what's going on. I really can't say anything else to that. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I know what's going on by what I read and what I hear and what's told to me, what I see on media. And again, we have to listen to the experts, whether you agree or not. There has been times that I might not have agreed with some kind of mandate or something, but if the people feel differently, again, I'm up here to represent the community. I have no personal stake in this, so if you want something changed from what I said, I will definitely listen to your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
So there are many districts that have been making it work since the beginning of the pandemic. Well, not the beginning. The first 3 months are understandable, but definitely from September till this point in time, there are other districts that have been making it work. So why not reach out to them and see what they have done to make it work as far as keeping schools open, teachers safe, children safe. There are definitely things that could have been done. As far as the CDC guidelines, there was many things that could have been done. The HEPA air filter, those portable air filters could have been brought in months ago, maybe even a year ago. There was in-duct UVGIs that could have been put in. There was upper room UVGIs. There was tons of stuff that could have been done, that could still be done in today's world to continue to keep the classroom safe. However, like Sal De Prima just said, I'm not a scientist either, but I would reach out to other people, other districts, and I would look at every opinion that is available at that time. I'm not just going to follow what they say on Fox News. I'm not going to follow what they say on CNN. I'm going to look at every single piece of material that I can and make an opinion off of that, present it to the board, and then together, as a team, like they should be doing, together, we would come up with a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Yeah, apologies because I'm confused. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Hang on. What do you feel is the best way to protect all students and staff from COVID-19?
Okay, great. Thank you. I believe it is, as everyone said, I'm not a doctor and I don't even play one on the board. But I do, as Mr. De Prima said, look at our experts. Our main expert during this was Audrey Baker, who has been a phenomenal resource as she reaches out to all the medical and scientific areas to get feedback, not only in New Jersey, but from across the state. As well as Mr. Cittadino working extremely closely across Middlesex County, conferring with the county superintendents to get best practices. But I think what is clear, the science shows us, it's a multi-pronged approach. If it was just one thing, it would be great. We could do one thing, but it is not that. So it is wearing masks, social distancing as best you can, getting a vaccine if you can, washing hands, getting outside, using the air filters like we have. So it is a number of things. And as Mr. Dunn said, doing those things are showing progress. There are schools who are, are quarantining, and we are not. So our goal is to continue to stay in school by following these steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent?
Obviously, the students and the teachers' safety is our first priority. Following CDC guidelines, obviously, that's a given. Masking, separation, again, there's no simple fix to solving COVID, to preventing COVID. And I think as best as you try, it's still going to be a possibility. So I think what we have to do is just review guidelines, review other schools' policies that are making it work, and try our best. I write policies all day long for the company I work for. I work in HR, and that, even today, I wrote new guideline policies and a vaccine policy. I think it's a process that we create, we try, we see how it goes. It's progress, not perfection at first. And I think that putting everyone's safety is our main priority. So if masking is the safest, we figure out a way to have our students masked, our teachers vaccinated or masked to keep distance, and we try our best.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade?
I'd like to see an ongoing education for the students as well as the faculty and teachers, keeping them up to date as to what's working and not working. Social distancing should still maintain. The HEPA filters and the air systems in the schools have to be monitored on an ongoing basis. I think that would have given us a little bit more of a head start last year. I mean, unfortunately, the superintendent last year used recommendations as standards and guidelines as laws instead of good old common sense. And I think that was one of the main reasons why the schools never reopened properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Our next question is for Mr. Marchetta. Mr. Marchetta, would you please explain why you felt the need to compare virtual learning to Nazi Germany on two different occasions during your public comments during the hearing of residents portion of two different Board of Education meetings?
I never compared virtual learning to Nazi Germany. What I did was, if there's confusion, I compared how the people standing by watching, knowing what was going on to the children or to even the people in Nazi Germany at that point. And they failed to fight the power on that because they were in a position to do so and never did. And as a result, you saw what happened in Nazi Germany, and as a result, what's going to happen to these kids' mental state? What's the numbers with kids that have mental issues right now after that? Has anyone done a study on that? Has anyone done a study on children that have anxiety? Has anyone done a study on children that have eating disorders because of that? There's so much that had happened in the last 18 months. And the people that were in a position to do something just sat back and watched. And that's a big reason why I'm up here right now. So there was never a comparison made for virtual learning to Nazi Germany. I think the people that asked that question should go back and rewatch that tape. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Our next question is for Mr. Slade. Mr. Slade, would you please explain why you felt the need to ridicule our special needs population and the American Sign Language videos that were part of SEPTA's We Are One campaign by stating, "Great hand signals. Maybe we parents should make a video of hand signals showing how we feel about the administration"?
I don't recall ever making that statement, so I will not address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Our next question is for all of our candidates, starting with Mr. De Prima. What are your thoughts on the current level of special education programs and extracurricular activities? And what programs would you bring to the district to encourage more involvement and participation from families?
Not too long ago, our special education program, from my perspective, was very highly touted. People were coming to Old Bridge for it. I'm sorry, say the second part again?
Sure.
My memory span's short.
Sorry. What are the thoughts on the current level of special education programs and extracurricular activities? What programs would you bring to the district to encourage more involvement and participation from families?
Okay, like I said, as far as I know, our special ed program is top-notch. As far as extracurricular activities, every child should have the same opportunity to the best of their capacity. Obviously, some people can't do the same physical things that other people can do, but there might be an abbreviated way to do it for them. I am all for everybody to have the same opportunity, whether it be a football player or a cheerleader or whatever, an actor, some kind of social club. Everybody should have the same opportunity. Again, we don't have the power that people think. Something like that, if you come up with an idea, you bring it up to your constituents, to central administration, and hopefully somebody could take the ball and run with it and make a program out of it, or a team, or a club.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima.
Thank you.
Mr. Marchetta?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure can. What are your thoughts on the current level of special education programs and extracurricular activities? What programs would you bring to the district to encourage more involvement and participation from families?
Are there currently not any extracurricular activities or programs? And I think that should be a question that should be addressed to the current members of the board, as they're the ones that have been in place to put those things in place for the students of the Special Needs Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. So I believe our special education programs are some of the finest in the state. So I think there's two different things, the curriculum, which is very robust, but then there's also the extracurricular activities, and it sounds like it's mostly about that. I would say I agree with Mr. De Prima that every child should have an opportunity to be part of any club, any sport, or any activity within the district. But I can also talk about a few things that we have put in place as a board. I think one of the most exceptional programs is in our high school, which is our Unified Generation curriculum program that is both students of different abilities who come together, and it's actually a course. Our Project Unify is an outstanding program that started in the high school and has moved down to the middle school. Our teachers who are advisors for this are phenomenal of bringing the kids together, and not only across the spectrum, but from the high school, working with the middle school, working with elementary. And I think also the foundational level of all this is our character education curriculum that we instill in our students from the earliest age to care for others, to be inclusive, to work together, that everyone is part of the same team. And I would also point to, because I was about to say it, is the We Are One campaign, which was done by our special education
Thank you,
PTA.
Ms. Ellis Foster. So close.
Okay, so close. Thank you.
Ms. Lentz?
As everyone just said, special education programs here are very well regarded. I know a few of the teachers, and I saw firsthand the benefits of some of our programs. As far as extracurricular activities, I'm not experienced or educated enough to say which ones we should bring in or not. I would suggest sitting with the parents and families of these students to see their suggestions, to hear where they feel the gaps are and where their students would benefit the most.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade?
I personally don't have any experience with special education programs currently, but I would believe that mental stimulation would play a big role in helping the children. Some of my participation recommendations would be field days outside of the school. I think that's a very important thing to get children acclimated to outside activities that would tie into education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Well, I can say with certainty that my daughter benefited from our incredible special needs program here in the Township of Old Bridge. This program is exceptional, and there's always improvements that can be made. And I have to say that I'm very, very proud of our special needs teachers, all our staff, our wonderful members of SEPTR and CPAG. They care sincerely, and they fight for what they believe in. And we on the Board of Education must continue to work with them and listen and understand what the needs of those families are. We need to do that because they are our most precious children who need our help. And quite honestly, this district has done wonders regarding the special needs children here. Now, I think we need more social skills programs brought in. We need to prepare these children for real life situations. We need to bring more behavioralists in. We need to bring more support staff, more psychologists, things of that nature, and we have to bring services back into district, because when we bring students and services back in district, then we can share those services for all our special needs children, because they all can benefit. So it's a constant battle. We do get extra funding for our program, and we need to continue doing the good work that we do right now for our special needs, but it's always necessary to make improvements and understand what our families need.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning with Mr. Marchetta. Given the strict parameters for usage, how do you feel the district handled its distribution of ESSER funds? Please be specific.
I don't know that, so I'm just going to skip that question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. Yeah, the ESSER monies were a great resource. Actually, the information I pulled out, I got from some presentations that are available on our website. But the main things that the ESSER monies did was to help some of the gaps during the pandemic. So specifically in the summer, we offered a much broader summer program. So there were a much higher number of students who were able to take advantage of that over the summer. We also were able to fund the high school credit recovery. So this was for students who were in high school who were maybe missing credits or in fear of not making graduation. They could take classes online to meet that requirement and not miss graduation. And then we also are using some of it this year for some of the additional services. So we have a mental health coach who's helping all of our teachers. That's coming from ESSER money. We're having a math coach who's, because of the change with block scheduling, more time in math, we have that. We hired more interventionists, especially at the high school. So that money is helping fund some of these needed new positions to meet these unique new needs of the school and of our students. So when we also did use them for our air purifiers.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent?
I'm not that familiar with the ESSER fund simply because I wasn't a member of the board when we received it. But obviously, it did go towards a lot of programs. My understanding is that benefit the children emotionally and educationally. Like Ms. Ellis Foster just mentioned, a lot of summer programs and additional online learning where the children were able to catch up so that they didn't miss graduation or anything. That's to the extent of my knowledge of it.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade?
My only exposure to the ESSER funds was actually very recently, going over the survey that went out to the parents, funding to help reopen the schools and get the children reacclimated into the program. How the funds were allocated, I don't have any information about that, but it was good to see there was funds allocated to help the kids get acclimated back into the system.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
ESSER funding, the federal monies that were afforded to the school district were used to ensure that we could reacclimate our students back into our schools. You know, it's important that federal money is out there. We received roughly $3 to $4 million of these funds, and there's also going to be more funds coming in, and it's important that we allocate them to areas that we need them for the academic enrichment of our children. You know, a lot of children are suffering from the lack of proper virtual education and classroom instruction, and these funds are here to supplement for staffing purposes, for items that we incurred due to the pandemic. You know, these funds are critical, and you know, I'm thankful that the federal government understood that there would be real severe impacts in school districts, and they provide these funds. You know, like Ellis Foster said, you know, recovery credit is very important for our students who want to graduate. These funds were put to good use, as you know. We put HEPA filters, filtration systems in buildings, and also these funds are helping pay for our breakfast and lunch programs. So I do agree with the federal government. Giving these funds did make things a little bit more bearable, but didn't cure all.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
Well, just like our regular meetings, going last is kind of tough because everybody already said everything. The only two things I could think of were, as Mrs. Ellis Foster said, was the air machines. I'm not sure what they're called. There's one over there. And correct me, if anybody could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that these funds helped us do the one-to-one on computers and streams, and we were able to supply, I believe, every child in the district with their own device for remote learning, which obviously that's a tremendous, tremendous undertaking.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Our next question is also for all the candidates, beginning with Ms. Ellis Foster. There is currently a nationwide shortage in education. Old Bridge is short-staffed in many positions, including bus drivers, noon hour supervisors, nurses, and substitutes. What is your plan to recruit and retain staff in Old Bridge?
Yeah, as you can see watching the news, this is a nationwide problem. From the staffing perspective, we are trying to work with other organizations within the state who work with colleges and other institutions to attract people. I think the atmosphere, at least in Old Bridge, as it used to be, is a place that people want to come and work. So we are looking at that. We are looking at making adjustments to certain pay scales if we need to, or give a bonus, because you're competing not only with the shortage of workforce, but where people are. So if somebody has the opportunity to make the same amount of money closer to home, they have that opportunity, they're going to do it. And then I think to continue to treat our staff with respect, so it's a place that people want to come to and work, is critical to retaining our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent.
Recruiting and retaining employees it's a problem everywhere. It's not only inside the school system, it's in every business, every restaurant. It's truly everywhere. And similar to other issues, there's no simple fix to it. You try to recruit as best as you can, working with other recruiters, other programs, whether it's colleges or sharing with other districts, creating programs where we bring in subs. But to retain permanent employees, it's a difficult situation everywhere. Employers generally are trying to raise salaries, create perks, create a more inclusive atmosphere, give their employees diversity, equity, and inclusion classes, and create a place where people not only want to come to work, but they want to stay. And I think that's important for us to try to create here, to try to create a community and environment where teachers and nurses and bus drivers feel that they're treated correctly, that they're paid a fair wage, and that it's an inclusive environment.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade.
I would recommend, old school job fairs, institute a referral program. It works very effective in my place of business with incentives. Obviously, keeping a close eye on pay scale adjustments, and making these jobs available to senior areas where there's some retirees that might want to get behind a bus. Retention, as Ms. Lentz said, showing more of appreciation, not taking our staff, take advantage of our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, we all know that there are staffing shortages throughout the nation, and obviously utilizing third-party staffing agencies I don't think is the answer, because when you outsource, it's not good. We have a wonderful Old Bridge Educational Association here in town, and they're partners, and they've done unbelievable work over the years with working with the administration in the school district to make things happen. We need to engage them. We need to work with them to ensure that we have the quality staffing that we require. Obviously, we all know there's a huge nursing shortage nationwide, and the Old Bridge Public Schools is impacted immensely based upon that. I know that the administration and the board have been working tirelessly to find avenues to cure that. Bus drivers are difficult to get because a lot of our bus drivers are retired and they're fearful to come out because of COVID. So there are a lot of trials and tribulations out there, but the first thing that we need to do is engage our partner, the OBEA, in getting things solved. They are someone who has been here for us. We've been there for them. We work mutually, and you know what? Working together, I think we can cure some of our shortages.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
This job shortage situation, I think it's become its own pandemic. It's not just our school, it's not just our convenience store, it's pretty much everywhere you look. Mentioned previously were job fairs and salary incentives, both of which are taking place. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that not everybody sees or knows about, but yes, there are job fairs, and it takes some creativity, I guess. It was mentioned about respecting staff. If somebody's making X amount of money and they get an offer for twice that down the block, but they're going to be miserable there, they might stay here for maybe a quarter of that. Again, it's being creative with what you have and what you can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I would recommend being more aggressive when it comes to looking for drivers, or any sort of staffing at that point. If the situation calls for it, like everybody else just said, then make the job more appealing. Higher salaries, more friendly work environment, maybe a better schedule. It depends on what the staffing shortage is entirely. If all else fails, then you could just try to do what Mayor de Blasio did and maybe entice them with a cheeseburger or something. That should work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Our next question is for Mr. Dunn, Mr. De Prima, and Ms. Ellis Foster. Mr. Dunn, you will answer first. All of you are for kids wearing masks in school. Do you wear a mask at home? If yes, all day. If no, why do you want kids to wear a mask? Mr. Dunn, you can go first.
No, I do not wear a mask at home, and I do not wear a mask at work. I do not wear a mask at the fire department because the rules that are governed do not require us and mandate mask wearing. You have to understand that the Board of Education is mandated to do certain things. And if we don't follow the executive orders or the governor, what happens? We can go to prison or they can take our state aid. And that's been made very clear to us. So obviously, people out there saying that masks in school should be dealt with and taken away, it's not that simple. If they're going to say, well, we're not going to give you your state aid, then how are we going to operate a school district? So we need to understand what pressures we have as board members and what decisions we can make. So I understand that. Hey, I believe it's a personal choice to wear a mask. I do not wear a mask at home. However, we have no choice based upon Governor Murphy and his mandates. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. If people think we can do something, let's hear it. Let's hear from people out in the audience and up on this dais how they would circumvent the governor and do away with masks in school.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
I wholeheartedly agree with what Mr. Dunn said. I do not wear a mask at home. I do not wear a mask at work. I wear a mask in the school building because it's a mandate. My personal opinion has nothing to do with it. I don't want to say the law, but it's the law. We have to do it. Otherwise, there are repercussions. So we have no choice.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Again, just adding on that, yes, it is a mandate, and that is our obligation to fulfill. I do wear them in the school. I do wear them where they are required. I do wear them in highly populated situations. But I don't wear it at home. We do not mandate anybody do anything at home. We don't deal with what goes on in people's homes. So as long as we rely on the federal government and state government for our funding, there are rules and regulations we have to follow.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Our next question is for Mr. Marchetta. Mr. Marchetta, you led a rally to open our schools in front of the teachers' union office. Do you blame the teachers for remote learning? If no, why protest in front of their union office?
I think that they were a very big voice in the remote learning aspect of my children's lives and every other child here in Old Bridge and America and probably the world. I have it on good merit that at these reopening task force meetings, the parents that were selected to be on there actually had a lot of opinions as to how to reopen safely, and they were constantly shut down by the president of the union at that point. So I do think that they had a big thing to do with it. I think that they were a big voice in the room as far as keeping the virtual learning going. And we chose to do it there because that was a location that would garner attention and has a lot of traffic passing by. So we wanted to get our message across that, yeah, we wanted schools open and we wanted our kids back in school, and that was the reason for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning again with Ms. Lentz. This past year, there have been instances of board members consistently showing up late for meetings, as well as failing to properly wear masks throughout the meeting. Will you abide by any health and safety requirements and state mandates if elected to the Board of Education?
I can't speak for why they were late. Obviously, there may have been situations that I'm just unaware of. I myself while I sat on the board, I was never late. I attended every meeting except for a few in which I attended my son's military graduations. As for the masks, it's mandated. It's a state law for us to wear masks while inside the school building. So yes, I will follow the law. Do I wear it at home, as the other candidates just mentioned? No, I don't. I don't wear it at work. I don't wear it at home, but it's not mandated there. I do follow the law, and I would wear it if required by law. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz. Mr. Slade.
Not being part of the board, I can't speak of the tardiness of the members of the board. They have their own personal reasons why they might have been late. In reference to wearing the mask, I will wear a mask if it's mandated and if it's required in the area that I'm located. So yes, I would follow the laws.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, there is a state mandate, and I will follow the mandate while in the school building, which is a given. With that said, I don't wear a mask outside the school grounds. I think that masks are a personal choice, and we do have board members up here who are outspoken about it, and that's their right to be outspoken. And you know what? The 9 board members have different opinions, and that's what makes us very diverse, and we can work together to find common ground, and that's what's good about the board when you have varying opinions. Do I agree sometimes that they don't want to wear a mask? Well, you know what? They have a personal choice. They want to make that choice, then all well be it, and they have to answer for their own actions. And whatever the censure would be, that's on them. But me personally, I understand that it's mandated. I'm going to follow the rules. That's the type of person I am. I will fight for what I believe in. I will continue to do that. As for board members being late, listen, you know what? People do work. This is a volunteer job. And sometimes, you know, it's hard to get out of work early enough to get here for 7:30. But all board members are committed. We do what's in our heart, and you can't fault them if there's traffic and there's problems getting here on time.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima.
Yeah, I don't know how to address lateness because I'm never late. But seriously, I mean, if it's a regular thing, then yes, that's an issue. It's I guess maybe lazy or non-caring. But if it's a once in a while thing, I mean, you know, there are, like Mr. Dunn said, traffic, who knows what could happen. As long as it's not a regular issue, then I guess people should be excused. As far as the mask wearing by the current board, honestly, I don't like wearing a mask, but I do. But it's apparent that not everyone does properly, and to me, that's an issue. If I have to do it, then I think everybody should.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I would just like to address something. Regarding the ESSER funds, I was not aware that that was in reference to the CARES money. I do think that there could have been a lot of stuff that was done with the ESSER funds, especially somebody mentioned the streams. Those are a terrible piece of equipment, and how the district got suckered into purchasing so many of those for the students is beyond me. I don't know why people are late to meetings. You should ask them. And I do not wear a mask anywhere I don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. You know, I take this role as a board member extremely serious. It's, as it was said, it's a volunteer job, but I find it's an honor to be in this position, and I respect it because of the trust people have put in me. So I do try to not only follow the rules, but attend as many meetings as I can. Granted, there are times, as we said, when people have personal reasons why they can't show up. But I think that those who choose to blatantly disregard the rules and disrespect the role of the board members and the public, I find it a shame, and it shouldn't be done by people who you elected to put your trust in and then are breaking that trust.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Our next question is also for all candidates, beginning with Mr. Slade. With the upcoming continued budget cuts looming, how do you propose to continue providing the continued programs that the district offers, and what would you cut?
Well, it's unfortunate there's going to be cuts in the near future and ongoing. I believe in efficiency. That's how I run my own household. I don't spend more than I bring in. I wouldn't cut any extracurricular activity for the children, any specials. I believe the culture, the arts, the music, you know, the second language to still be maintained. If there's going to be any cuts, I would like to trim the fat from the top, if that's capable. I was at a few meetings where I saw some contracts being extended and raises being made. So I would like to trim the fat from the top of the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
The Old Bridge Board of Education budget is $154 million a year. We used to get $48 million in state aid. Now we only get $32 million in state aid. So there is a huge hole that needs to be plugged. And there's only so many avenues that you can go and find money. And 70% of our budget's based upon, you know, salaries and benefits and things of that nature. That's a given, and there's only a small fraction that we can really work with. But, you know, my plan, and I know speaking with some of my board members, is school consolidation is important. Right now we have 11 elementary schools operating, many of them within 1.5 square miles. And I understand school consolidation may not be a popular topic because we all believe in the schooling ideal, the community schooling ideal. However, we need to find money somewhere. If we can consolidate 2 or 3 schools, that's savings of millions of dollars between staffing costs and also with operational costs. You know, we're not going to cut staff, but we can reallocate and move people to different buildings. But the facts are we need to think outside the box and find avenues that are going to work to reduce, you know, our need for money. It's incredible right now that, you know, we've been able to find avenues, but we will not cut programs. We will not cut the things that have made this district so wonderful. Educational enrichment is our goal, and that's what we need to do, but we need to find unique ways like school consolidation, building some new buildings, and achieve savings
Thank
through,
you, Mr. Dunn.
through programs of...
Mr. De Prima.
The budget process is one of the most arduous tasks that we're given to do. Excuse me. A bunch of numbers are placed in front of us, and we got to figure out how to make it work. It took me probably the first 2 years of my tenure to even understand how it worked. As Mr. Dunn said, we don't want to cut. This loss of state aid is just a horrible thing. I don't know how else to say it. Just like I said earlier, if you have a household budget and you're used to this quart of milk, but the quart of milk goes up to $2 from $1, you still need it. So you got to find a way to be creative to still be able to get that quart of milk on the same money or less. Our business administrator is just short of genius when it comes to finding nooks and crannies of where we could probably gain an extra $1 or $2. I don't recall any budget meeting where there hasn't been at least a few board members who said, no, that's too much, we have to do something to cut it, bring it back, do some magic, bring it back to us. And he does. Unfortunately, tax increases are a part of that. You know, we're all taxpayers too, so I can't stand paying higher taxes. But it's part of the process to keep the programs that we've become accustomed to. Once the budget cuts stop, maybe we will be able to regain some normalcy. We have 2 pandemics, budget cuts and COVID.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima.
Thank you.
Mr. Marchetta.
So the tax levy in 2011 was $88 million, and it is now, as of last year, $106 million. So that means it was raised nearly $20 million in 9 years. Raising taxes is not the way to fix the budget. They are pricing out the elderly and retirees who will no longer be able to live here. So like I stated before, there is very little planning and going into this. There's 1,000 different ways to fix things, and raising taxes is not the only way to do things. So a little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of working together with the board and the administration, and especially with the most important people, the taxpayers and residents, we'll figure something out on how to keep funding the schools logically, cost effectively, and especially keeping money in the taxpayers' pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster.
Thank you. So these are things that we've been looking at over the last couple of years because it's not a surprise they're coming. One of the things that a question to ask was about the ESSER money, and that is one way that we can fund critical things we need out of the and not out of the operational budget. And I believe this next round of ESSER money, we have up to 3 years to spend. So for example, we typically invest in new computers because, you know, you get a computer and in a year or so it's old. So instead of taking maybe $250,000 in a budget, we don't need that. We can use ESSER money. That $250 stays in the operational budget and keeps us going. We're looking at selling our Nike base, which will bring in money to the district. That will go into capital reserves to fund some of the big projects. But typically each year we put anywhere from $1 to $3 million in capital projects. We won't need to do that and keep that in the operational budget. So there are some ways to do that. In addition, we are actually have one of the highest ratings and efficiencies. If you go out to the Department of Education site, there's tons of data, and for a district our size, we rate as the highest, as well as one of the lowest administration ratios. But the other thing you have to remember is we talk about these amazing programs that we have and all these services we need for our kids, and we need to give them all the emotional social. We need to give them the special education and all their special services. We need to give them their AP classes. We need to give our children the best.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster.
It costs money and people to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Lent?
I have a degree in accounting and fully understand how a budget works, and I'm able to read it just fine. I always equate the budget to your own household. If you had a two-income household and then unfortunately one of the incomes is cut or they lose their job, what do? Obviously, you have to be creative, you have to cut somewhere, you have to make adjustments. And I think all of our priorities up here is to try to save every program possible that benefits the children, which means that we will have to examine where in the overhead we could start cutting, whether it's consolidation, whether it's salaries, whether it's benefits. Something has to give at some point to keep these programs alive for our kids. That would be our last resort. That would be my last resort. I would try to work as a team, as I did when I was on the board previously, and just get creative, work with the business administrator, work with the taxpayer and the parents to try to see where we could cut without hindering any type of benefit to the children.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Okay, our next question is for Mr. Slade and Mr. Marchetta. Mr. Slade, you can answer first. Did you receive permission to use the district logo in your ad campaigns?
No, I did not.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Marchetta?
Plead the fifth.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Our next question is for all candidates, beginning with, where are we at? Sorry. I believe we're back to Mr. Slade starting, right? Did you? No, you just ended the last question, so we're back to you. Sorry. I have it all written down, but it's just not. So beginning with Ms. Lentz. So our question for all candidates is, how would you work to ensure a more diversified workforce?
A diversified workforce?
Yes, a diversified workforce.
I think diversity, equity, inclusion, I deal with every day at my current job. I have 3, 4, or 5 meetings a week sometimes just to be more creative and to figure out how we could educate our employees. And I think it just carries right over into the Board of Education. You have to educate your employees, whether that's online training, whether that's it's education, plain and simple. You have to make sure that they know how to respect each other, that there's boundaries, and that there's a line. And that's how you create diversity, equity, and inclusion within your company, essentially. And this is no different than any other company. You have to educate your employees.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz. Mr. Slade.
2021 diversification is part of our language now. There should be no discrimination, no segregation, and we should just be focusing on qualification. You should be qualified for the job, regardless of your background or race, creed, or color. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
The Old Bridge Public Schools is a very diverse school district, and we also ensure that diversity is reflected in the hiring practices. And obviously, you know, training is a big part of it as well, and I know that the school district on a yearly basis, through continuing education and through mandated training here in district, they do diversity and equity training for all teachers. That's the environment we live in today. You know, everyone has been created equal, and we need to respect one another, love one another, and help one another through life. And I believe the Old Bridge Public School system has done what's required, and we have to do more. And I'm hoping that moving forward, you know, diversity is reflected in our daily lives throughout all ranks of the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima.
As Mr. Dunn said, I think we are already very diversified. But it's ironic that question was asked now. About a month ago or so, we had a meeting with our New Jersey School Boards Association field rep, and one of the things we touched on was how can we include diversification more into our, I guess, the whole district, really. I mean, and it's being discussed. It's something we're working on already. So it's in the beginning stages, but it has been noted and has been recognized and will come to fruition eventually.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I think if you want a more diverse district, then you should hire people from different backgrounds. However, I also believe, more importantly, that the person should be qualified, and there should be more focus put on the education aspect of our district rather than how diverse it is. Find the most qualified people and hire them. If they come from a diverse background, then that's great. Congratulations. If they don't, then that's fine too. It does not make a difference. Diversity is great, but at what cost? Is it going to come because we're going to hire somebody who comes from a different background, but they can't teach, and they're going to ruin the child? There has to be a line drawn as far as doing stuff like that, because you're going to create problems for the kid, you're going to create problems in the future for them, and if the person meets the qualifications, great. If they're diverse, great. Beautiful. Everybody wins. Education should come first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. As Mr. De Prima stated, that is actually one of our goals this year, is to try to find a more diverse workforce. We do have an extremely diverse population, but it's not always reflected in the workforce. And it is true you can only hire from the pool that comes forward. But we are working with other groups to try to find that. We can look in more non-traditional ways of how people got to their certification, maybe not the straight up college route, but having all the right credentials, because we would never hire somebody who was not qualified. To even give that indication, I think is somewhat reckless. But I think what's true is students, when they see somebody who looks like them or is like them, it inspires them to grow. So if I can tell a quick story that was shared with us, that there was a student years ago in our district who was legally blind. That person went through educational, got a certification, and is now hired by us. So that children in our district who may not have full sight or have some disability can say, look at that person. They did it, so I can do it too. And that is a critical thing to give to our students.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Our next question is for all candidates, beginning with Mr. Slade. Do any of the candidates here tonight have a conflict of interest with the board for voting on budgets?
That's a great question. Just from attending a few of the Board of Ed meetings, we were privy to know that there's about 3 or 4 members on the current board that have a conflict of interest, disabling them the ability to vote on budgets, leaving approximately 5 board members to be able to vote, leaving 3 as the majority on the voting rights. There should be stronger restrictions or background checks before a board member is elected to see if they have any family members in the system giving them a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Thank you. Yes. So first of all, let's get everything correct. All 9 board members can vote on budgets, regardless if you're conflicted or not. So the question, I think, is a little skewed because all board members, regardless if they're conflicted or not, can vote on all budgetary matters. So that's a given. Now, in my position, yes, I am conflicted. My wife is a first grade teacher at Cooper Elementary School. So I'm excluded from voting on the school superintendent and my wife's supervisors. That's it. I can vote on everything else. I can vote on every budget issue. I can fight for what I believe in, and I will continue to do that. So that question is misleading. Everyone who's conflicted can vote on the budget. So very simple.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
As Mr. Dunn said, we could all vote on the budget, but I don't have any conflicts on anything.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta.
Since we're back on the topic of the budget, I would just like to say again that from 2011 to 2020, the Board of Education has raised your taxes $20 million. I also would like to say that as far as budget cuts go, no program should be cut because not every kid goes to college. You got to keep the programs at every cost. The board's job is to keep the focus on education and preparing kids for life after.
Mr. Marchetta, I'd like you to remind you that we would like the candidates to please answer the questions that are presented. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm not conflicted because
Thank
if I was, I would not run. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis Foster.
I have no conflicts.
Ms. Lent.
Similar to a few other board members, my mother does work as a noontime supervisor, so I am only conflicted when the matters pertain to her position and her supervisors. Other than that, I not only vote on the budget, but I understand it and can read it, compared to some other candidates who cannot.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz. Our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning with Mr. Dunn. It is a three-part question. Do you have sufficient time and energy to devote to this position? What do you think is expected as a Board of Education member? And how can you contribute to a successful board meeting? And I would like to remind all of our candidates to please stay on topic and please be respectful of each other as you're speaking. Thank you.
Yes, I have plenty of time to devote to my responsibilities as a board member here in Old Bridge. Obviously, I believe in volunteerism. I believe in giving back to this wonderful town, and basically that's what I do with all my spare time. Between being the chief of the fire department of South Old Bridge Fire Department here in Old Bridge, and also a school board member, this is what I do after hours. And I take my responsibilities extremely seriously. I believe in giving back to this wonderful community. This community has done a lot for me. So this is my way to repay our wonderful residents and community members by devoting all my time to the Board of Ed and as the fire chief here in this great town. Expectations, you know, I give my all. I go to all the committee meetings that I can. I go to all the board member meetings. I haven't missed any board meetings. I am not late to meetings. I am an active participant in the community and school community events. And I will continue to do that because this is what I believe in. I believe in education. I believe education is the way to cure a lot of the ills that we have in society. I'd rather invest up front with my time to ensure that our children have an avenue for success in life.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
Yeah, time and energy. This is pretty much my social life. I'm at everything I could be at, if it's school-related or even community-related. Obviously, this year it's been a little tougher, but up until the pandemic, I spent most of my free time with board-related items. What is expected? That's a very simple question that people make very complex. The definition of a board member is we're not supposed to run the schools. We're supposed to make sure the schools are run properly. That's pretty much it. Anything after that is fluff. Going out to different events, being involved, obviously being a liaison and a voice to the community. Most of us, at one time or another, are somewhat active on social media. People contact us, thus the voice of the community, and I apologize, but I missed the third point. If you could just repeat that.
Sure. How can you contribute to a successful board meeting?
Oh, to a board meeting, being active. I mean, I'm not usually a talker, but when I say something, I think it's usually something of importance. At least I hope so. But involvement. We need involvement. You can't just wear the title without doing something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Surely. Do you have sufficient time and energy to devote to this position? What do you think is expected of you as a board member, and how can you contribute to a successful board meeting?
I do have the time and energy to do it. I will make it a point to do it and do it well. How can I make the board, what was the second part of the question?
What do you think is expected of you as a board member?
To oversee the district and make sure that it is run properly. And the third part?
How can you contribute to a successful board meeting?
By bringing the board together and working together to make, again, and I'll say this all night, folks, to make Old Bridge the best that it can be. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. I do have the time and energy. I actually am semi-retired, so I have time now during the day that I didn't have. So evenings are usually open to do that. And I think the board member can make it as much time to commit as they want. We don't have to go to every single committee meeting if we're not on it. I find it's important to stay up to date. During my time, I became a certified board member to learn everything I can be about being a board member, and I just found that was important. So I think you're expected to hear from everybody. You can't always implement what every single person wants, but I think going to the part about contributing to the board meetings, we have always let everybody talk, regardless of what their viewpoint is, because everyone has the right to be heard. So I think making sure we continue to have both 2 times during our meetings, public comments to hear from them, and we are here to oversee. We're not here to do the day-to-day. All right, I think that's it before my time runs out.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent?
I absolutely have the time and energy to run. When I previously sat on the board, as I mentioned earlier, I attended every meeting. I was on time. The only times I missed a meeting was because my son's graduation or promotions in the military. Just similar to last time, I plan on being an active participant, using my education and experience background and applying it to topics in which I could add value to and that could benefit the student. And I plan on keeping an open line of communication through with the parents, with the taxpayer, to make sure all their voices are being heard. I think that's our responsibility as board members, to stay connected with the community and to listen to them and offer guidance when we can.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade?
Yes, I absolutely have the time and the energy to be a member of the Board of Education. Although they set guidelines and it's our job to manage it, one of my biggest perks would be to answer all emails and calls from the township, something that I feel has been neglected in the past. My contribution to the board would just bring my enthusiasm, my passion, and to maintain camaraderie amongst the board. I don't make it a practice of finger pointing and highlighting any inefficiencies. We need to work together as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Our next question is for all of our candidates, starting with Mr. De Prima. Please explain your knowledge of the special education programs in the district and how you would work to improve them.
My special education knowledge is probably less than others. I made a point of trying to attend SEPTA meetings up until the pandemic. To me, the Zoom meetings kind of threw everything off. I found it tough. We're back to in-person meetings. I attended the first one for the year. I'm not going to try and say I'm an expert on special education because I was never part of it in my personal life, and I'm learning.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
Repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Please explain your knowledge of the special education programs in the district and how you would work to improve them.
My knowledge of the special education programs within the district only go as far as when my children received special services, speech or OT, through the fantastic teachings of Ms. Tracy and Glenn, Ms. Kimberly Hussey and Glenn, Ms. Alfano and Grissom, Ms. Dias. That's as far as my expertise in that field goes. So it's not precise. However, that does not mean that I am not unwilling to learn. I would look to the parents to tell me, how can we improve the special education sector of our district? I would want them to email me and talk to me, and then we could have a conversation, and then I could relay that conversation back to the board. And then, again, we could work together as a town and as a board to figure something out. Because there's no such thing as impossible. There's only ways to figure something out. And you do that through teamwork, you do that through communication, and that's a way that I would look to improve it, would strictly be through parental input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. So pretty much everything I've learned about special education, I have learned from being on the board. And what I've learned, it is an extremely wide and deep curriculum. But we do offer amazing services from the very beginning, from early preschool all the way up to 21 and transitioning services. So I think it's a field that is always evolving, because as you tackle one tier, there might be another tier of services that are needed. So I think we continue to look at what are we doing, what's the best practices out there, what are new programs out there that we can adapt. But I also say that our families, our SEPTA and our CPEG organizations are amazing advocates for their children, who bring up ideas of what could be next, what could we be doing next. And I think having those relationships and working closely with those groups is what helps us implement new programs. So I think continuing to build on those is the best way to continue to improve our programs.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent?
My son never required any special ed programs, so I don't know firsthand, as well as someone who does utilize the programs on a daily basis. But I do have several friends who their children require special services, and I see how wonderful some of the programs are. But I do hear about the gaps where we're lacking, and I think it's important for any board member that is elected and the board as a whole to listen to these parents, to learn from them, to hear their suggestions. They're the people that are doing it day in and day out. Each situation is special, each situation is unique, and I think listening to them will help us improve our programs for everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade?
Again, I don't have any personal experience in the special education program, so my background's very limited. But if elected, I would like to attend as many forums and meetings to educate myself, taking as much input as I can from the families that are affected, and bring those concerns back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Special education here in Old Bridge is very dear to my heart. My daughter studied in this district as a 3-year-old at Carpenter Elementary School with principal with the principal there, and quite honestly, early intervention made a big difference. And from 2008 on, I was a huge advocate of the special needs program here in Old Bridge, and I admire the program because of the services that we do provide. The Board of Education does understand the needs, and we do work collectively to ensure that the programs are there for our most important children. I can say, between SEPTA and CPAG and James too, we have a great program where we hear each other, we support each other, we work with each other to ensure that the programs that are going to make a difference are there. And I have to say, our teachers are unbelievable. Our special programs, our special needs teachers work so hard, and they are so dedicated to what they're doing. And I hear some of the teachers being mentioned up here today, but everyone from our classroom teachers down to our paraprofessionals, they do an exceptional job, and that just proves that our Old Bridge team is exceptional, and I'm very proud of that. And my background is very diverse, with having my daughter in the program for over 13, 14 years. IEPs,
Thank you,
I'm very
Mr.
familiar
Dunn.
with it. It's a great program, and we will continue it.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning with Mr. Marchetta. Do you understand the role of the superintendent? Describe the superintendent's role, and what is the role of the Board of Education?
The role of the Board of Education is to make sure the district is being run properly and to basically be the boss of the superintendent. The Board of Education and the parents, it is similar to a pyramid where the CEO is at the top, and then the employees, and then whoever else underneath them. With the Board of Education, it's completely different. You put the parents at the top, the way it's supposed to be, parents and residents at the top. And then in between them is the Board of Education, and then underneath them is the superintendent. The superintendent will then oversee principals and assistant principals and so on and so forth. The Board of Education is supposed to make sure that the administration is doing the right thing. And I think that the district, the residents and the parents need to ask themselves, not only for this year, but in years past, after people actually started paying attention, have they done that? And I think that's a question that needs to be asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster.
Thank you. So the superintendent of a school district is the chief administrative officer, so much like a CEO. The Board of Education hires that person. That's the one direct hire that we have. We give him or her their review, and we give them overall goals of what to do. Per the mandates of the New Jersey school boards and the DOE, there are certain decisions that are administrative and operational that are made up or determined by the superintendent. So we cannot tell the superintendent necessarily every action to take. I believe our superintendent does look for consensus in his determination of how to make some decisions. So I think there's been some statements this evening that are just inaccurate. I think we have robust, let me just say, I know we have robust discussions, sometimes in executive sessions, on how to do things. There were robust discussions in the task force that come to the decisions. When we have our public meetings, there are typically summaries of what happened. It's not verbatim of everything that happened. Our role is to oversee. We cannot get into the day-to-day operations. That is not our role. The superintendent
Thank
has
you,
to
Ms.
make-
Ellis Foster.
2 minutes goes fast.
It's only a minute and a half on the responses, so that's why it does go so fast. Ms. Lentz.
As my two fellow running mates mentioned, the superintendent essentially handles the administrative side of things of the district. He oversees it. He takes the goals that the Board of Ed is looking to accomplish and tries to implement them into the curriculum. The role of the Board of Ed itself, we oversee. We make sure that everything's in compliance. We try to create a line of communication between the parents and the administration. We listen to the goals of the students, the families, and bring it back to the administration and try to create goals and programs that would benefit everyone. We cannot make certain decisions. We cannot overrule certain decisions. We really are there to help guide and to make sure that everything's in compliance and that things are being run properly.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade.
To the best of my knowledge, the role of the superintendent is operational and administrative. The role of the Board of Ed, policy making and planning, looking out for the welfare of our children, and the Board of Ed works for the people of Old Bridge. So we should be listening to their voices, their concerns, addressing them, trying to make Old Bridge a better educational system for our children, and hearing the voices of all the concerned parents.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn.
So the superintendent, he is the chief administrative officer here for the district. He handles basically everything that has to do with education. Obviously, we have a BA also. He handles the financial aspect. But the superintendent is the CEO, or chief administrative officer of the district, and he answers to the Board of Education. We are the ones that plan. We are the ones that give guidance. We're the ones that set the tone through our strategic planning and our goals to empower the superintendent to move forward with what we believe is right for our students. Obviously, there's an organizational chart here, and who sits on top? The Board of Ed, the taxpayers. We're elected by the people, so immediately after that is the chief executive officer or the chief administrative officer, which is the superintendent, and he answers to us. That's it. We cannot go to anyone else in the district. We have no other powers other than hiring, firing, and giving guidance to the superintendent. Now, real quick, I know that Ms. Ellis Foster said robust discussions. I can tell you they were not robust, but they were more very confrontational. We have argued and have gone at it in executive session based upon our personal feelings and what was best for this district. So thank you for utilizing a word that seemed a little bit more softer, but the real life in executive sessions, it goes beyond screaming matches sometimes. That's because we all bring passion to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima.
The role of the superintendent, when I first started, the superintendent was an interim superintendent, so I wasn't getting a good taste of how things were run. I was part of the hiring process when Mr. Cittadino came on board, and again, it's a little hard to use him as a barometer because he does everything. He has his role, which is running the district, but I mean, if he had to come in here and mop the floors tonight, I'm sure he would without even blinking an eye. So he does everything. As my definition of the role of superintendent, going by the current superintendent, is everything. If it needs to be done in the school district, he will take care of it if there's nobody else to do it. The role of the board, as I said earlier, it's not as complex as people think. We don't have as much power as people think. We're not supposed to run the schools. We're supposed to make sure the schools are run properly. Yes, we do set policy. I neglected to say that earlier. And our role as far as hiring and dismissing is to hire the superintendent. Everybody else comes under him, and if you come to meetings, you see we vote yes or no on some hirees and some resignations and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Our next question is for Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn, what would you do different about the $15 million deficit that you haven't done in the last 10 years that you have been on the board?
So as we know, politics plays a huge role in what happens in school districts, and it all depends upon who's in office and who is there allocating the funds. Obviously, Governor Murphy felt that he wanted to not give waivers to school districts regarding, the state aid. He felt that he wanted to reallocate those money to school districts that were more in line with his political philosophy, which I can understand. The inner cities, Abbott school districts have money, but they need more money, it seems like, and that's what he did. Now, for us as planning, I know that where this question is going is what I would have done differently. There wasn't much more we could do because we had the monies, we had the programs. We couldn't save the money. People don't understand the budget process. If we have excessive funds, we will lose the funds. So it's not like when you have monies that are in the black. If you have monies in the black, you have two options. You have the option of giving it back to the taxpayer, or you have an option of putting it into your reserve accounts, only so much. That's called excessive fund balance. So everyone doesn't understand how the budget process works. I know questions can be given to us trying to get you, but understand what parameters we have and what rules we must follow, and we have to follow the rules. And people think it's very easy, but we get audited, and if we fail to follow the rules concerning our budget, obviously we will be censured. So again, what could we have done differently? There's not much we could have.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next question is for all candidates, beginning with Ms. Ellis Foster. The question reads, throughout the pandemic, there were multiple instances of Old Bridge's town council weighing in on school district topics, even passing resolutions without ever picking up the phone or contacting the school administration or a Board of Education member. Should this occur in the future, what, if anything, would be your response?
Okay, thank you. Well, certainly we have no control over what the town council does. What I think is clear is when we work together, we're much more productive. We saw that with the Shiraz School. When we work collaboratively, we do much more for our students and for the community. I was upset about it because there were no calls to find out what was going on, and assumptions were made about what we were doing at the district. And I just think that's not fair to do, and it's somewhat reckless to do that. I think having the conversations would have been much more effective of how can we work on this together. Maybe there were some other solutions we could have come up with. But I think it created division that was totally unnecessary. And I can't control if it if it happens again. I would rather they would come and maybe have a conversation with us.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent.
I can't speak of why or what happened in the past since I was not on the board, but I can say going forward, whomever is elected to the board should keep an open line of communication between town council and the Board of Education. I think we're two very important bodies within this township, and we need to work together. We need to communicate, and I think that it shouldn't be about the Board of Ed, and it shouldn't be about town council. It should be about the student and the taxpayer and what's best for them.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. Mr. Slade, excuse me.
Yes, I also agree there should be an open dialogue with the town council and the Board of Ed. Communication is key. We're all driving towards the same goal, is to keep the township of Old Bridge safe. The education system should be effective. So there should not be a pissing contest between who did a better job. Let's keep the lines of communication open, and we should all work together as a team.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn.
Collaboration and working with the town council is very important. We have the interest of all residents of Old Bridge at heart, and we need to work together. And that's why back in 2012-13, I proposed having a liaison, a board member, work with the town council to understand each other's needs and concerns. However, that never materialized for certain purposes. I don't know, but I can tell you, we can work together and find, common ground on many issues. However, I can tell you that, the Board of Education has to stay apolitical. There should be no politics interjected into the Board of Ed. We're here for one purpose, and that's to ensure the education of our students and to make this the finest school district. So yes, town council, I respect them immensely. They have a lot to share. We can work together. There should be a liaison appointed from the board to sit with them and work with them and vice versa, because we can have that open dialogue. However, politics needs to stay out of education, because you know what? When politics gets involved here, it's not healthy, and then who gets affected is our students. And that's the thing that we worry about the most.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
We're the two elected bodies in town. We should have a good relationship. Just like any two people working together, husband and wife, brother and sister, boss and worker, whatever. There should be a line of communication and collaboration, as people have said earlier. Actually, I don't really see a problem personally. As Mrs. Ellis Foster said, we had an issue with Shiraz School. They stepped right in and helped us out. It was two teams working together for one goal. A few years ago, there was an issue with trying to change the elections back to April, the board elections back to April. That's what they wanted to do. Again, we collaborated, we talked about it, maybe fought a little bit, but they realized that we were, I don't want to say we were right, but they conceded what they wanted to do. We worked together for a common goal. So I don't really see a problem personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta.
Like the other men and women up here said, they should be working together. The left hand should know what the right hand is doing. Mr. Dunn, that is a phenomenal idea to have a liaison. It's like that there's open dialogue, and without politics being involved, it should always be about the betterment of the student. With that being said, I am exceptionally proud of my town council for stepping in, because when you're an elected official, regardless if you're Board of Ed or town council or mayor, your number one priority is to listen to the people who have put you in that position. And I thank God every day for my local council, because they had the courage enough to get involved and to do something and help the people that put them in that position. So I am extremely proud that my town council got involved. I am exceptionally happy that they got involved this last time around when Chirac closed and there was a failure to plan about any sort of school closures. I will take that to the grave. I thank them, and I am very, very, very grateful that they had them. But to Mr. Dunn's point, again, politics don't belong in school. So if there was a liaison, which is a tremendous idea, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we are down to the final 3 questions. Home stretch. So our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning with Ms. Lent. What do you think is something that sets Old Bridge apart from other districts? It's a long question, 3 parts. What would you see as the biggest challenge facing education today? And if elected, which committee would you like to sit on? I'm going to repeat it one more time just so you guys can hear it, because it is very lengthy. What do you think is something that sets Old Bridge apart from other districts? What do you see as the biggest challenge facing education today? And if elected, which committee would you like to sit on? And Ms. Lentz, you're up.
It's going to be hard to fit that all in 90 seconds. What sets us apart? I think it's evident. You have 7 candidates running. The community has a love for our school district, for our students. I think our community involvement and our love for our students sets us apart. It's mind-blowing how much we care about their education and their future. What challenges? The budget's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a huge challenge, and whomever is elected is going to have a heavy task to try to figure this out and to try to help navigate through it. And what was the third part? I'm sorry.
The third part of the question is, if elected, which committee would you like to sit on?
Oh, committees. I've been part of the facilities committee before, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The negotiation committees, as I mentioned earlier, I was chairwoman of. I think my business and education background, I could offer a lot to that committee. And obviously, wherever there's a lacking in which my skills or my experiences could help out, I would certainly apply and put forth effort towards.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz. Mr. Slade.
I think that one of the things that sets Old Bridge apart, which also or more importantly makes it special, it's a great family town. A lot of outdoor activities, a lot of inbreds from Brooklyn and Staten Island, which is where I originated from. So it gives us a lot of things to have in common living in Old Bridge. One of the biggest challenges I think facing education will be budget cuts, as we all mentioned. Keeping qualified educators in front of our children, keeping them motivated to stay there without looking to jump ship. And a committee that I would like to participate in would be special education, just due to my lack of experience and a personal experience with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn.
So what sets us apart from other school districts is that we are a community of one. We are very diverse and we love one another, and I say that from the heart because I see it every day by serving on the Board of Ed and as the fire chief of a fire department here in town. It's amazing how this community comes together as one, no matter what the situation is, and you know what? That's what makes Old Bridge special, is that we're there for each other. And we bring that and carry that over into our schools, which is amazing to see when there's some sort of issue or some sort of tragedy, we all come together as one. It's unbelievable. The biggest challenge, obviously, is the draconian cut in state aid. Without money, we can't operate our schools. Yes, we can have economies of scale. We can try to save money by looking at each line item and doing certain things, but when you get cut $15 million and now another $4 million, it's going to be $19 million for a 21-22 school year, that's a tremendous amount of money. And we need to find the avenues to plug that hole. And I have a lot of suggestions. I've been on the board for 10 years, and I've seen a lot of issues, especially when Governor Christie cut our budgets. We worked very well, hand in hand, and we found the avenues to keep our programs in place. So the committees that I think I would best serve on is the ones I've been on for the last 10 years. That would be Finance, Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation. I have a great feel of what's going on, and I think I can make a difference.
Thank you. Mr. De Prima?
Something that sets us apart. I think everybody here or listening has heard the term OB Proud. This is a proud district. Take a look at YouTube, the videos that the students do, the videos that the teachers do, the videos that the students and teachers do. You could see the sense of pride in the schools, in the buildings, in everything that's going on. Football Fridays. Go to Lombardi Field on a football Friday. It turns into a small town. Everybody's having a good time, and the camaraderie is great. The biggest challenge, obviously, as everybody has said, is one of the biggest challenges is money. In my humble opinion, I think it's getting through this pandemic still. We still have a long way to go. I want to get back to what it was in 2019. You take a look around, you see people, some people don't have the same enthusiasm. They're sad, they're disgusted, they're tired. I want to get back to normal. Committees, I've been lucky enough to chair. The committee I chair has been through 3 different name changes in my tenure, but it one way or another, it involves athletics and Lombardi Complex. I love it. It goes back to what I just said about Old Bridge pride and keeping a tab on what's going on with the other stuff besides the academics. Obviously, academics comes first, but I am a big proponent of sports, arts, industrial arts. Those things mean a lot to me.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I think what sets us apart from other districts is the parental involvement in the schools. I think that we're going to continue to see growth in that. I also think that what sets us apart is our educators. As many people up here have stated previously, that our educators have done a tremendous job, especially in the special ed sector of it. So I think those two are exactly what set us apart. The most difficult task. So everyone's saying the budget's very important, right? But how about figuring out where these kids are educationally? They missed 2 years of school. My 6-year-old cannot spell the word at. So how about we figure out how far behind these children are, okay? And then we could talk about the budget after that, okay? Because the budget is important as well, but I think if you go around town and you talk to people, and you talk to other people in this town, you talk to elderly people, and you tell them that your child can't spell the word at, I think they're going to have a problem with that. So I think that that's the biggest problem, as well as the budget. I think I'd be willing to serve on any committee that needs my help, wherever I could serve to help. If you need me to scoop up poop in the parking lot, I'll do it. Whatever committee
Thank you,
needs
Mr.
my
Marchetta.
assistance, I will do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. I think it's been said that Old Bridge is the biggest small town there is. So I think what sets us apart, as several people said, are the people in our town. And the phrase, I can't use it more, I use it a lot, but we are one. And it's looking out for each other, taking care of each other. And a lot of our programs help support that. So the character org curriculum that, kind of sets a foundation. And there's just like way too many programs. I try to get some in, but I got cut off, that we offer. But our staff who have, more so in the last 18 months, stepped up, the administration, of everybody working together. Biggest challenges, as I said, is that assessment of the gap, the knowledge loss, and then the corrective plans to correct those. And that is happening now. And then I think, as we said, the staffing is going to be is a current and ongoing issue. And then the committee I'd be on, if reelected, would be to continue on the strategic planning, because we do need, this is a place where we can address some of those with the community being part of that decision-making process.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Okay, our next question is also for all of our candidates, beginning with Mr. Slade. There are candidates who are running on a platform of transparency, stating that all public meetings should be included, all public should be included in committee meetings and the budget process. Are you unaware that all committee meetings, including budget meetings, are in fact open to the public? How many committee meetings have you attended in the past 2 years? And have you had a contribution to those committees? So beginning with Mr. Slade.
Well, committee meetings, if you're referring to Board of Ed meetings, because we were all virtual last year, I attended all of the virtual meetings in my pajamas. In reference to transparency, I mean, I'm aware that everything that's discussed during the committees in the Board of Ed is, as someone mentioned, they are transparent. They're made aware. But just through my recent campaigning for the Board of Ed, there's a lot of closed-door meetings that are held and non-public sessions that are held that we're unaware of. Something as recent, I was made aware that the superintendent's contract was extended, and that was not done in public session. So I'd like to see subjects that are on a pick and choose basis as to what's public and what's not. I think everything should be public.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Mr. Dunn?
Yes, thank you. Transparency is very, very important, as we know, and this district does an incredible job of getting the information out. Going back in 2012, I pushed for all meetings to be put on our website. So all meetings will put on the website because we need to have people knowing what's going on. Not all people can come to the meetings, obviously. Committee meetings are open to all, and you can go and participate. Your voice is heard in a smaller climate, and you can make a bigger difference by joining a committee meeting and giving your personal opinions. And we have a committee meeting next Tuesday concerning transportation and some issues with special needs, and that's going to be a small forum, and we're going to be able to hear from parents who have been affected by certain operations, and that's what we do. That's why we have transparent meetings. As for executive sessions, we have to have executive sessions. We can't discuss everything in public because of state law. And when we speak about, employees, when we speak about teachers, the superintendent, they have rights. And their rights, through the rights process, you need to be able to discuss with them and give them their due process in private and not in open forum. So that's a state mandate. There's nothing we can do about that, and it affords the employee the rights of privacy, and that's what's important. But we are transparent. It's great that everything's on YouTube, and you know what? Come to a meeting and you'll see at a committee meeting how it works and how much you could participate.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Mr. De Prima?
Yeah, as I said earlier, saying we're not transparent really confuses me, because there is nothing we say or do that cannot be seen or heard somewhere. As Mr. Dunn said, we do have executive sessions, and 99.9% of the times in an executive session, it's about a personnel issue, whether it be disciplinary or financial, whatever it is. Just think, if it was you wouldn't want it, if you were being disciplined for something, you wouldn't want it to be public. That's pretty much the only non-transparent thing we do. All committee meetings are available to everybody. I mean, they're not always well attended, but come on down. I myself attend, as I said earlier, pretty much everything. I was a little lax maybe with the Zoom platform, because I personally get fidgety. I don't know. I just sitting there behind my computer. Not my cup of tea. But before that, I was at everything, as you can be. Everything is open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I think that transparency goes a little bit deeper than just coming to meetings and asking questions and doing everything else. I think transparency means having a connectivity with the parents even after a meeting, with the residents even after a meeting, extensive email conversation or phone conversation. That is full transparency. Being told exactly what's going on, that's being fully transparent. So just coming to a meeting, to me, isn't good enough. I would want to hear the voice of the parents. I would want to hear the voices of the resident on everything that they have a question on. That, to me, is being fully transparent. And what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question was asking how many committee meetings that you have been to.
So previously, before this year, full transparency, I would attend a meeting here and there when my wife would watch it, and I would always deem it as, oh, it's not important, I don't need to know that, it's not important. Boy, was I wrong about that, right? Because it's actually so important to attend these meetings and know what's going on with the schools, with the curriculums, as far as taxes being raised every year. So I've attended meetings in the past here and there, but since I got serious about it and wanted to be a voice and wanted to be the change in my community, I've attended every single board meeting since January, and even if I don't get elected this time around, I will continue to come to these meetings every single month. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Yes, thank you. The current board members explained that all committee meetings are open to the public. There are times when there are executive sessions, very clear rules on what we can and can not discuss in public session. So we can't say, hey, let's talk about, Mr. De Prima at the meeting. So let's go into executive session. Our lawyer knows this law, and he tells us whether we can or can't. So it's nothing that we decide willy-nilly what we do in executive session. But everything is open to the public, and I know we try to give updates in the agenda meetings or regular meetings of what happened in a committee meeting to let the public aware of what's happening. I think the biggest you see is in the curriculum. We tend to have more presentation style of what was presented in curriculum. I've been to pretty much all of them. I don't know the number.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lentz?
I think transparency is key, and I think the board does a great job within the constraints of the law. Obviously, as other board members have mentioned, in executive session, you do speak about private issues in which cannot be discussed in public. So unfortunately, that does have to be kept private. But other than that, all the board meetings, all the committee meetings, you could find them online on YouTube. I implore all of you to attend them. Don't just be a voice of anger or upset. Come be a voice of change. Offer suggestions. Attend the meetings. Everyone's email addresses are posted online on the website. Contact your board members. Try to open up a line of communication. There may be issues that they're not aware of, that you as the parents, as the community members, it's your right to make them aware of it. And it's their responsibility as board members to listen to you and to try to help you and to try to hear you. And I think that's how we keep transparency open and out there. And but I think it takes both sides to participate. It's just not one-sided. You have the right to attend. You have the right to question. And it's your responsibility to do that. And so I implore all of you, whomever is elected, contact them if you aren't happy.
Thank you. Okay, we have reached our final question of the evening. We will begin with Mr. Dunn. This question is for all of our candidates. The last question. The district's theme for this year is Be the Bridge. What does this mean to you? Mr. Dunn?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
Sure, sorry. The district's theme this year is Be the Bridge. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, the theme, to be the bridge, is very important. To have a theme is something that, keeps us focused on what's important, and we have to bridge the pandemic to the real world right now. There's a lot going on, and we need to, of course, reassess our children and ensure that they didn't fall behind. We need to bridge the gap. We need to do a lot of work together to ensure the educational enrichment that was not received over the last 18 months is in place, and we need to do that assessment to ensure that there's no one falling behind. This district works wonders when we put our heads together. We work with the public, we work with everyone involved, and we need to bridge the gap. The gap of the budget issues, the gap of learning inefficiencies. We need to do all that together. So bridging it together is very important, and it's a theme that will continue making us focus on what's important. And you know what? The Board of Education is working well together, and no matter who is here, I am confident that the 9 will work in unison for the betterment of our community. With that said, if this is the last question, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight, and I think that, I think I'm the best suited board member up here to continue doing what's necessary for our district, and I'm asking for your vote. I have the energy and passion to continue my endeavors here on the Board of Education. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. De Prima?
Well, a bridge is a vehicle to get from one place to another. We were, as I said earlier, we were a good school district, and the place we were going to over the bridge was greatness. Unfortunately, the past year and a half have been a roadblock in the middle of the bridge, so we had to stop. Once that roadblock is gone, we can continue on to bigger and better things, and the greatness that I think we're capable of. Thank you, and thank you all for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. De Prima. Mr. Marchetta?
I personally think that it should be changed to, instead of be the bridge, is that it? How about be the change? How about you start teaching the kids to stand up for what they believe in, to stand up for what they think is right? So that's what I think it is. Not echoing, but I think that everybody in the audience and people watching at home should really think about who they want representing them for the next 3 years. The incumbents and other members, other people up here that are running have had their turn for 10, maybe 3, 4 years, maybe 15 years in some people's lives. They've had their turn to try it, and whether or not they believe they did well, that's up to them. If I didn't believe they did well, I would not be up here right now. I implore everybody to really think about where they want the future of this town to go. If they want to see the continuation of what we've seen, then I think then we should, if that's the direction you want to go, then go for it. But I think that maybe it's time, again, to be the change and create a change. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Marchetta. Ms. Ellis Foster?
Thank you. I think, how we create these themes each year is something else that sets us apart. It gives everybody in the district things that we can work together on. And Be the Bridge is, to me, is a couple things, is how do we make those connections with each other? You might be on that side, I'm on this side, but how do we find that commonality and work together and connect with each other? There is that bridge of the educational gap. How do we take that? How do we take the children from where they are now and bring them to where they can succeed? I think it's about how do we find that we all have more in common and that we work together. That whole unifying thing, it's something as subtle as, Dr. Sasso's talked about the bridge between GNC and the main campus of how do you bring people together, even if you're physically separated. So I didn't know this was closing, but I do want to thank everybody. I think that it's clear of where people stand. And I am always available, as I have been the whole time, and have talked to many, many people throughout the district over the years. So thank you, everyone.
So I turn myself off. Thank you, Ms. Ellis Foster. Ms. Lent.
Be the bridge. So if you visualize it, it's really an entity that connects two otherwise separate bodies. And I think it's a wonderful theme because you can be the vehicle that connects two people, two groups, to the teachers and students, the students and administration, the parents and the students. You could be that person to connect the communication, to start change, as another board candidate just mentioned, to create the teamwork. It's progress. It may not be perfection at first, but it's progress. And I think as long as you're trying to make a good change, you're trying to move Old Bridge, the township, the education system here in the right direction, you are creating the bridge. You are being a bridge to something better. As everyone else is taking this opportunity to thank everyone, I too would like to thank everyone. I think that the township is very lucky to have 7 very qualified, caring individuals up here running for the 3 spots. And it's you, the voter, who has an opportunity to select the 3 best people that you feel could do the best job for not only you, but for your student and for your taxes. And this is your opportunity to have your voice heard. Go out and vote for the people that you believe are most qualified for the position, whether it's myself or other candidates up here. I know everyone's heart is in the right spot, and I wish them all luck, and I'm truly honored to be sitting up here with all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lent. And Mr. Slade.
Save the best for last. Be the bridge is definitely a great motto. I think there's been a huge line drawn in the sand over the last 18 months, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of people standing on ceremony. So be the bridge is incredible. To me, I define that as banding together to get to a better side, a happier side. If we can get together emotionally and spiritually, we'll get through this together as a township, and it's great. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for participating, and I'll leave with the note that if you like status quo and you like the way things are going, you can vote for the people that have been in the chair. If you want a new set of eyes, a new fresh set of eyes, a set of eyes from a parent who's not a politician, who has children in the system, then vote for Jay Slade. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. Okay. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our students who are filming us tonight for being here tonight and also for being a part of our candidates interview. So a round of applause for our Old Bridge High School TV students and our TV teachers who are here with them as well, so that those of you who are at home can also see this event. I'd also like to thank the OBEA and the Old Bridge President's Council for hosting this event this evening. To the candidates, thank you for your passion and your commitment to the children of Old Bridge. Good luck to each of you. For those in the audience and watching at home, we hope that this forum has been informative. Good night, and please don't forget to vote. Thank you for coming, and have a great night.